Hi, everybody. I am Andy Jardin, your host for The Silver Lyming. I am grateful to have you here as an audience to listen to these stories that I bring forth about recovery from Lyme and tick-borne illness. For those of us living in this space, we know all too well about what this can really look like for people. And oftentimes, I think sometimes it's underplayed, more so like if you catch Lyme right away, generally speaking, you get treatment, you're going to have a pretty good outcome. 70% of people go on and have no long-term consequences. However, there is a subset of the population that goes that does have long-term ramifications from that exposure, or a group of people who don't get diagnosed right away. And that is sometimes often where the problem really can lie, is that it's been allowed to run rampant in people's bodies and their tissue and organ systems, and it really burrows in and it becomes much more challenging to eradicate from the system. And so those people who are doing like the long haul journey, I really hope these words are powerful for you. I found through my own healing process, took me about 7 years to get better. And these kinds of stories were really crucial for a little bit more tackling fuel, is what I liken it to, just to help me have a little bit more energy to get through the fight and to know that it is possible to heal. There are many times when I was questioning that ability, but deep down inside, I was thoroughly committed to the fact that I was going to get better. And I have another guest with me here today who has also used the strength of God and the act of miracles to get herself better. And it's been a lot of fun to watch this young lady progress. Today, I have Camryn Cassetori here with me, and I'm just really blessed to have, again, the space to share these kinds of stories. I have been watching you now for a few years because I've met your mom, Michele, through PA Lyme Resource Network. That's my parent organization for support groups for people with Lyme and tick-borne illness. Michele runs her own chapter, and just has been a really wonderful person. And I'm glad that you have her as support because, again, she's just a very caring, nurturing energy. And again, my guest today is Camryn, who has recently graduated from Francis Marion University in Florence, South Carolina. And when I saw that you graduated, it's going to make me like cry maybe a little bit again, just because I know how hard you had to work just as a traditional college student, but coming at it from the perspective too of having had chronic illness accompanying you through some of that journey, and just how much harder it probably was for you, and just the magnitude of your accomplishment is amazing. I know you did get a degree in liberal arts in English, and you were one of 7 graduates to achieve university honors, which is tremendous. You're a member of the women's tennis team for your first 3 years of college. And that's also, again, something that I've had fun watching you with, is your tennis career and just seeing you, and you dominate and kick some serious butt on that. And now, so after graduation, I know that you're hoping to gain some valuable work experience, and you're either going to be pursuing an MBA or attend law school. And so we were talking a little bit about that. So if anybody's listening and they have some leads for Camryn possibly, or just some words of wisdom that you can impart upon her on her journey, should she do MBA, should she do law school, please feel free to reach out or leave your comments below. And some of her hobbies include, of course, playing tennis and pickleball. I have not yet gone there myself, but maybe we'll get there. And then she's into weightlifting with her younger brother and her older sister. She loves to travel, read, going to the beach, of course, good choice. And on the weekends, you can find her getting coffee with her friends or spending time with her family and pets. I know she's home right now from college, and faith is an integral part of your life. And I really value that and appreciate that and respect that a lot. She's a part of an all-women's Bible study and attends New Spring Church. And again, I just am happy to have you here. It's an honor and a true blessing to be able to share this space with you. So if you don't mind, could you please just share with us a little bit more, Camryn, about how you became infected, how you became in the space that we love so much as Lyme and tick-borne illness world, please?
Well, thank you so much for having me and for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate that.
Mm.
Um, so I got sick about 10 years ago now. So I'm 22. I was 12 years old when I got sick, but I didn't know it at the time. I got bit by a tick, and because I was so young, I didn't understand. I actually had a bullseye rash, and I didn't really know what that meant because I was used to getting a lot of bug bites, so I just kind of thought I had a bunch of different mosquito bites. And so I just ignored it. And then as time went on, I started to develop these symptoms. Like my mom couldn't wake me up in the morning because at that time I didn't have my own alarm clock. My mom still woke me up. So I couldn't get up in the morning. I had no energy. I had really bad brain fog. I couldn't focus at school. I started to get swelling in my joints. I would get like these swollen, painful lumps on my elbows and my knees. And like the biggest symptom I think that really happened to me was I lost all the muscle in my right quad. My leg had just atrophied. And growing up, I was always like a multi-sport athlete. I played basketball, I played soccer, I obviously always played tennis. And so it was kind of abnormal that I just would lose all the muscle in my right quad. It was literally like overnight too. And so I started having pain and eventually, I mean, I got an MRI done, I got an X-ray done, and nobody really knew what was wrong with me. So I started physical therapy and thankfully I gained the muscle back. But that May, I went to the doctor and just my pediatrician and my mom was kind of explaining some of the stuff. And at this point, my mom had started to catch on and start to connect some dots. She was obviously paying attention to my array of symptoms. And so when we went to my pediatrician's, she told the pediatrician all my symptoms, and the pediatrician thought that I maybe had like early onset arthritis, or I guess there's like an arthritis that kids could have, some type of
Okay.
arthritis. And my mom really was adamant she wanted me to be tested for Lyme. My pediatrician was like, no, I really don't think it's Lyme. And my mom was like, can you please test her? Like, I really want, I want her to be tested. So they agreed and I got tested. And then 2 days later, of course, I still remember the day I found out. It was literally like 10 years ago now, but I came inside and my family was sitting on my couch and I was like, "Mom, did my test results come back?" And she was like, "They did." And she was like, "Yeah, you have Lyme disease. You have late Lyme disease." And I guess when my test results came back, like every strand was just positive, which I know for some people that's not the case, that you can get tested and it'll be a false negative. So looking back, I am thankful that I had an accurate test. But I was at that point I was 13, so I got bit at 12, diagnosed at 13, and at that point, obviously, it had been a little too late. But I'm just thankful that I was able to at least get diagnosed then, and it wasn't prolonged even longer. But yeah, at that moment, I had no idea what was going to be in store for me. Um, so definitely really crazy to think about. And I would have never expected that I'd be here now where I'm at then. So it has definitely been a crazy and long journey.
Yes, I was just talking to somebody about that. It's like I will never forget the day I got my diagnosis because
Hmm.
at least like I knew I wasn't crazy and that there was legitimately something wrong.
Hmm.
But little did I know what lay ahead. Like that's the part that it's like,
Hmm.
phew, okay, I can just take a little bit of antibiotics and I'm gonna be okay. And
Hmm.
sadly, that's not necessarily the case. Like here, I can hear the record needle scratching, like, nope, that's
Yeah.
not gonna be how this goes. And so, can you talk a little bit then about what getting better looked like for you? So you
Hmm.
got your diagnosis, and then it was more clear that it was probably going to be late stage. And actually, I guess that's something I just want to take a sec to elaborate on for people listening. Again, if you feel you've been infected, you have a bullseye rash, you found a tick crawling on you, whatever it is, treatment is time sensitive. So it's very important. It's very critical that you get treatment as soon as possible. Because again, as I had mentioned earlier, this is a corkscrew shaped organism called a spirochete and it burrows into your tissue. So the longer that it's left there, the deeper it burrows in. And then it's just that much harder to get it out. So it is very time sensitive. It is very important that you get treatment as soon as possible. So on that note, now we're a year into your Borrelia. burrowing in. So tell us then a little bit more about what happened after that, please.
So, they sent me to an infectious diseases doctor, as they often do, and the doctor prescribed me, I believe it was 21 days of doxycycline. And I took that, and it was a tough 21 days, especially because it was the summer. I went to the doctors in May. So this was like May, June time, and I do play tennis, so I'm usually outside. So, I started taking the antibiotics, and I wouldn't even be outside that long. Like maybe just walking like to and from the car. But I started in the middle of the night, I would wake up and I would get really like my hands and my feet were burning. It was like a burning sensation. It literally felt like they were on fire.
Yeah.
And so I would wake my mom up in the middle of the night, it'd be like 2 a.m., and she'd come in my room with cold washcloths and she would just stay there and like hold it to my hands and my feet because they were just burning. And so I would also, at that point, because I had just found out I was diagnosed, I was having nightmares because I was just nervous. I thought there were bugs around me. So those first 21 days were tough. But thankfully, by the end of it, when we went back, I had been feeling better because, again, I had, just gotten off antibiotics and it helped a little bit. But they didn't even retest me when I went back to the infectious disease doctor. They just wrote cured on a piece of paper. Like they did not even take my blood. And so it didn't really make sense, but I felt good. And, of course, I just wanted, it was really, yeah, it was kind of foul, if I'm going to be honest. They literally, like, she was just like, oh, you're cured. And I was like, okay. I mean, I was 13. I wanted to be cured. So
Of
I was like,
course,
perfect. This
of
is great.
course. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's quick and easy. Here, I did the medicine, and then, and then were you cured?
No. Of course, that's what they thought. But so after that, of course, I started to feel better because, again, I was just getting off of medicine and I, was able to start working out again. And so I felt good. And then after about a month, like my symptoms just slowly started to come back, but they came back even worse. So I was having really bad anxiety about everything, like everything and anything. I was having panic attacks. My brain fog was worse. My concentration was terrible. I was exhausted all the time. And so my mom kept calling the doctors back and was like, I don't know. I think she's like, it's coming back. Like, I don't think she's better. And they said like, no, your daughter, I'm a middle child. And so they were like, your daughter's just, she wants attention, like she's a middle child, like she has middle child syndrome. So so then they were like convincing my mom that it was like an attention thing, and my mom knew it wasn't, but again, like she has these doctors saying, like, acting as if they knew me and my who I was. And so that caused issues. And then after some time, we ended up finding some more Lyme literate doctors who were able to help me a lot more because they actually knew about Lyme. And so then I was put on antibiotics, but also like vitamins and different types of antibiotics. It wasn't just doxy, it was treating the other co-infections, which at the time we didn't know that I had, but that's often what accompanies Lyme when you get bit by a tick. And so then I was able to start treating some other infections that were going on. Because I had Lyme, I had Babesia, Bartonella, and a positive, is it positive Epstein-Barr? I think that's how it's spelled.
Yep, yep.
Okay. I had all of that, and like all of my blood work was out of whack. Like nothing made sense. So I was on oral pills for a while, probably about 2 years. And I was taking over 125 pills a day at one point. Yeah. And at this point, I was a freshman in high school. So that was just like I was nauseated all the time because I'd have before breakfast pills, after breakfast pills, afternoon pills, before lunch, lunch, after lunch. Like it was insane and it was hard to manage. Like I'd be going to school and I'd have to take like my little vitamins with me, just because I had like before it was crazy. And on top of that, you had to be careful about what you were eating because obviously like sugar isn't going to help, dairy's not going to help, gluten's not going to help. Like you're so inflamed, the last thing you need is more food that's going to inflame you even more. So, I was on oral antibiotics for a while and then it just became too much for me. Like I just couldn't do it anymore. And so my doctor had said, we could do IV antibiotics, but because I played tennis, I didn't want to get a PICC line. But I was just done. I was like, I can't keep taking 100 and however many pills. It was like I said, it was over 125. So I was like, I just can't keep doing this. So I got a port put in my chest. And so that at that point I was about sophomore or no, I was a freshman in high school still. And I did IV antibiotics for about another year and a half. Um, and that at least cut down my pills, which was nice. But I still, same thing. I wasn't, I was still not where I wanted to be. And again, at this point, I was like about 4 years in. And so, after that, and it was the timing of it was convenient because you're allowed to have a port put in your chest. You're allowed to have it in your chest for 2 years. And I was
Okay.
coming up on the 2 year mark. So I at that point I was a junior in high school and I was having heart problems. So I would get POTS. So every time I'd stand up, I would start to pass out. There would be a couple times when my brother, who was probably 12 at the time, would have to help me because I was falling over and he was a small little baby practically and he's helping me. So I was really fed up and I was like, you know what? I think I might just need to go like inpatient somewhere and just do that because I was starting to have heart issues and it was getting scary. So I decided that I was going to go and do like a foundational treatment method in California. So we flew to California and I had like it was a foundational approach. So it was hyperbaric chamber, ozone therapy, IVs with just like vitamins, lymphatic drainage, um, red light therapy, and then stem cells. I got my stem cells extracted, cleaned, and put back in me. And I don't think any one thing is what helped me or what cured me. I think it's the combination of everything. It's just the foundational approach was the last approach that I took because at that point too, I was just so fed up. And I told my parents, I said, look, if this doesn't work, like I'm just gonna have to live with it because I just I can't keep doing this anymore. And so literally praise God that I got better. And that was like a year-long program. And the timing of that was crazy. I went in March of 2019. So of
Okay.
March of 2020, I I was like cured, which was kind of great, or cured, but it was great. But as soon as I'm able to enter the world and be healthy, the world shuts down. So that was a little strange, but it gave me more time with my family. And it also, I think, was good too because I was kind of able to really just continue, eating good was easy because it's not like we could go anywhere. So that also I do think kind of helped me as well because I had a little bit of longer time just, you know, but those were some of the treatment approaches I took and some of the things that I think all of it helped me ultimately, but that's kind of the order of how it went as well.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm fascinated by this thought too, because my last visit to my Lyme doctor was January 31st of 2020.
Hmm.
And I was like so excited. I'm like, I'm healthy again. I can do things. Like, I don't have to
Hmm.
do all this crap anymore. Like, there's
Hmm.
still some maintenance I do, of course.
Yeah,
Some
definitely.
it's completely systemically changed us. I suspect that I still eat healthy
Definitely.
and I still take some supplements and I do this
Hmm.
and but like that was one of the greatest days of my life. And then splat comes COVID and it's like, no, no. I want to be free. Like I want to be enjoying things. And so that was definitely a little bit of a slam in the face, but I valued it like you did and took the additional
Hmm.
cocooning time, if you will,
Yeah.
and just kept going with that. Um, and what else was I thinking about as you're talking about that? But I mean, I have not met anybody else kind of with the same exact timing that way. And so
Hmm.
just what a big shift, if you will. But also, I remember is just thinking about like people will ask a lot of times, is there one thing that you could do to fix yourself? Like what would be it? And it's like, no, 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 this isn't one thing kind of fixes this type of
Hmm.
thing. Unfortunately, like you listed an array of infections that you had going on in your body. It's not
Hmm.
just one thing that's going to fix that. It's the
Yeah.
whole entire combination. And I always had the visualization of just hitting it with a sledgehammer from every side.
Yeah.
Like it's like maybe that's a perfect visualization for people, but like we think it's got the biofilm around it, right? Like, so it's protecting itself, it's in there. And so you have to just really whack at it from every angle possible to get it
Hmm.
out. And trying a little bit of everything is probably uh, maybe the best bet. I don't know, because then you'll find
Yeah.
something that you're like, oh, that seems to have helped me, or oh no, maybe not so much. Let's focus on something else instead. And I often thought too that there are a lot of options to heal, which is good, but
Hmm.
it's maybe overwhelming sometimes for people, or like which one's the right one for me. I'm not really sure. And I think sometimes when something resonates with you or sticks with you, or like you just have more certainty in something than something else, then that's probably going to be the right path for you.
Hmm.
Um, and so I'm kind of curious, like when you were coming down to this foundational treatment, was this something um like before it started, do you remember at all? Did you have like a connection more to it, that you felt like, yes, this is going to be the right thing for me, or maybe no, it was just sort of like, I don't care at this point, let's just try something.
So my mom had mentioned to me that there were different places that I could go where I could be, inpatient and get like almost like kind of like a 24/7 type care deal. So which also one thing I should specify, I say inpatient. When I went to California, I didn't actually stay overnight there. Like I was in California, but I didn't stay at the clinic where I got treatment. So I do
Okay.
want to clarify that because I said inpatient and it's kind of in a way impatient to me because I had to leave and go across the country. So,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I technically didn't actually stay at the place. Like I was there for, they told us straight up, and that was the thing too. The program was a 2 week long program. So it's a year long, but you go there and you're there for 2 weeks. Monday through Friday, you're getting treatment for, they told us for 5 to 8 hours a day, you're going to be there. So I would get there at 8 a.m. and I would leave either at like anywhere from 3 to 5. So it was like a full-time job, I mean,
Yeah.
they were long days. And so that's kind of what I meant by inpatient, but I know that's technically not. I didn't actually physically stay overnight at the clinic. So I did want to
I don't think
clarify
anybody's
that.
going to
But
take that away from you though either. So that you redid
yeah.
your entire life, like, oh no, you didn't sleep there. Okay, no, like I'm glad that you're
Mhm.
clarifying, but no worries. No worries.
But yeah, so because there were some clinics that my mom had looked at that did actually have you stay overnight. And at the time, again, one thing that I think is really important about my story is my age, because again, I got bit when I was 12, but the majority of my treatment was when I was in high school. And that's a hard thing to be developing as a woman, like, well, a woman, I was a girl, but like, being a girl, growing up, being sick in high school was like the worst thing because I was never there. I would come and then I was gone. And people would literally ask, like, where's Camryn? Like, what happened to her? Is she like okay? And like that's super like embarrassing in a way, which obviously now I know it's not, but at the time it was like, it was a hard thing to deal with. And so my mom had mentioned to me again that there were some places where we could go and be inpatient. And I wasn't ready because there was a lot of shame and guilt that kind of was associated with that, which it shouldn't have been. But because I was so young, I wanted to be at school with my friends. Like ultimately, I loved playing tennis and I loved, being active. But the hardest part was that I couldn't go and be a normal 14-year-old girl. Like I couldn't go to school and meet people consistently and form really great friendships because I was only ever there like 50% of the time. Like everybody else was 14 too, they needed to move on with their lives. I mean, you're so young. So it was that is kind of why I had waited on that and I wanted to try to avoid that if I could, but like I said, I was starting to have some heart issues and that was getting scary because I was genuinely nervous that I was gonna die. Like I don't mean to sound, harsh or anything, but that was the truth of it. I was not sure how much longer I was going to be living because I was getting better so slowly, but then I was getting different types of symptoms that just like, again, are just scary. Like when your heart is when you're starting to have issues and you're passing out when you're standing up, I mean, you're like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen? So I still remember I told my mom, I said to my mom, I said, Mom, if I'm gonna die, I want to just travel the world. Like I want to see places. That's what I've always wanted to do. And she was crying and she hugged me and she said, You're not gonna die. We're gonna get you through this. And so that was when I just decided that I was like, okay, I want to go somewhere and be, impatient. And if this doesn't work though, I specifically, we kind of all, me, my mother, and my father, we kind of all collectively agreed that like this was the last, if this didn't work, like then I was just going to have to start to live my life because it's expensive, like my parents, I'm one of three, so it was a long and expensive journey. And so in this going somewhere impatient was going to be a lot of money all at once. And so this was kind of like, again, I said to them, like, if this doesn't work, then I just have to adjust. And so we kind of all agreed. And so I think that's also partially too, though, why it was able to kind of help me because I went into it knowing that this is it. Like if this doesn't work, then I'm going to have to just accept my life. And so I think all of us, and it really was a team effort, both my parents, my sister, my brother, my grandma, my grandfather, it really does take a village because it was a lot of work, and so everybody put 100% into it, and everybody was so supportive and so helpful. I mean, again, my brother was so young, and my sister is going off to college, and they're helping me. They're on board. They're eating the food that tastes like garbage because it has nothing in it. And they're not complaining about it, and they're helping me. And I mean, I'm so thankful to my mother and my father for all they've done because, obviously my siblings helped me a lot, but them and like I said, my grandparents, I mean, everybody was just super accommodating to me. And I think that support though also is really what made the world of a difference because it does take a village, and I'm so grateful that I was able to have that. So
Yes. Yes,
mhm.
you're making me cry just thinking about all the support
Yeah.
that you had. And I mean, that's so imperative. And it's something else that's an interesting topic. And one of my other guests, Fred Diamond, talks a lot about this is just what it looks like from those supporting us going through it, right? And how
Mhm.
that journey is for them. And sometimes they go away. And so, and understandable in the situations too, like, get it. But like, I'm just so glad that you had consistent support, especially at that young age, that everybody was really willing to dig in their heels and help you
Mhm.
um, get better because here
Mhm.
you are,
Mhm.
thankfully, better.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that like I feel like you're telling it in such a grounded space of energy that, but like I'm trying to put myself in your shoes at that young of an age and have heart problems and things like that going on with the body
Mhm.
would be terrifying, I'm sure. And
Mhm.
so I'm definitely grateful that you had that support, and again that you were able to find your way back to health. And so now, for the most part, are you good? Do you have any symptoms remaining? Everything's kind of cleared itself from your system, or where are you at with that right now?
So, overall, I would say I'm pretty good. Um,
Yeah,
I've gotten blood work a couple of times since March of 2020, and thankfully it's consistently come back normal.
great.
I do have good days and bad days. The bad days are much less frequent than they were. And usually that's just a byproduct of me overdoing it, whether that be doing too much, work or trying to work. And also like I do really value, working out because that was something that was taken away from me for so long. So I try to be active like 5, 6 days a week, but sometimes it's too much. And I think finding that balance was really hard for me for a long time. And I definitely noticed it a lot when I was playing competitive tennis because, I was playing for a Division II team. I mean, everybody was amazing and phenomenal. And really knew how to play. And so, the schedule was tough. We'd have early morning lifts and then we'd have practice for 2 hours. And in between that, I had classes. And then after classes, I would, come home and I'd have to cook for myself and do laundry and then do my homework. And so it was definitely a lot for a very long time, but I think really it hasn't been until this year that I've really started to find a good balance. And because also too, it's not good. Obviously, it's great that I'm able to be active again, but it's also not good when you're overactive either. That's not going to help. And so it just took me a while to find that balance because again, it was taken from me for so long. And for a long time, I was honestly scared to kind of push that boundary because I didn't want to have a relapse or have any issues. I didn't want to go back to feeling the way I did. So I kind of was going off different extremes, but I do feel like now I'm finally starting to find a good, happy balance. Um, so I do also take some supplements and I do have to watch what I eat. And I definitely feel worse when I'm eating poorly. That food definitely impacts me a lot. But I think just doing things that I think a lot of people should do anyways, like watching what you're eating, getting proper sleep, being careful of the chemicals that you're around, making sure your environment is clean and healthy and, you don't have any mold or anything. I think little things like that help me a lot. And I definitely think that when those things are slacking, I feel it more. So that's where I'm still definitely different from some people who maybe have never been sick, who never had any chronic illness, who never got bit by a tick. But I think the majority of people really should be trying to do that anyways, even if they weren't sick.
Amen, sister. That's exactly what it really comes down to is we all should be doing these basic, nice foundational health principles that give better optimal health. And a lot of times they get put on the wayside. And when you're having faced chronic illness, you have a little bit of a different relationship with that because you will notice the effects of making maybe not the best choices more readily than people who don't, because I'm the same as you. Like if I go too hard, if I very rarely veer off the eating path. Like it's just I'm very, very good about that. But it's the sleep and the stress that will impact me. And also right before my
Mhm.
period, I will feel it a
Yeah.
little bit sometimes too. And so, but for the most part, it's very good. And I feel like you're, again, at that same place. It's like you're able to function, live again, be
Mhm.
excited about stuff, get up easily. You don't need your mom to come drag you out by your ear because you can't get yourself out, like it's
Mhm.
just so much better. And I'm with you. It's like talked about this with other guests, but you almost have like a permanent accountability coach in your life now because
Mhm.
of what's happened to us. And we certainly remember. Although I'm curious, do you feel like you can remember your symptoms as specific as you used to be able to in your body?
So it's funny because when we talk about it, it starts to come back to me, but my brain and this is like a blessing and a curse, but my brain really has blocked a lot of that. So it's funny, even as you were asking me about my story, I was like, wow, I forgot about that. I forgot about the way I felt during these things. I forgot about how bad it actually was because my brain just doesn't want to go there. It's just compartmentalized it. And so I, when on certain days, like a day like today, for example, I was at the tennis courts from 8 until about 11, and I was playing with some friends, and then I gave a lesson. So I have like 12,000 steps today.
Good
But
job.
yesterday I played tennis and I did a leg workout. So now my legs are a little achy, and that was one of my worst symptoms. I would be woken up in the middle of the night with achy legs, and I would have to I would usually my mom would come in my room and rub arnica salve on it because that was like the only thing that helped me. Advil didn't help me. The icy hot stuff didn't help me. Only arnica cream. So which of course is probably one of the most natural things. So of course that's going to work better than all the store-bought stuff. But like there are certain symptoms like that when I feel achy legs, like I'm like, yep. And I've told even my friends who I've become closer to now in this stage of my life who didn't know me when I was sick. I'll even text them sometimes. I'm like, yep, I'm having like really bad achy legs, it's that reminded me like from when I was sick. So there definitely are some symptoms that trigger that memory and I remember it in the moment. But for the most part, I think my brain has really tried to block a lot of that to protect me mostly. Again, I was so young, but yeah, certain things I remember better than others. Like I do remember the POTS part. But I definitely have some symptoms I think that I don't remember as much just because they don't reoccur and my brain is just like, nope, we're not going there. So I hope
Yes.
that kind of answers the question.
Yes. And I think also too, what I think about with that is that's really also another indicator of healing, right? Like you're past the
Hmm.
point of remembering any longer because it's no longer an active vibration in your body. And
Hmm.
so you're not going to remember it as well. And
Hmm.
that's I think also maybe some more like tangible proof in a sense that you're
Hmm.
healing is that you can't remember that anymore. And I'm in the same space too. It's like I can't really remember, but it has occurred to me that that's because I've healed.
Yeah.
Partially, I think it's our body and our brain protecting us a little bit as
Hmm.
well and not making us have to like relive the trauma over and over again.
Hmm.
But I journaled my symptoms like right after I got diagnosed. I wrote a piece about it and I'm kind of glad I did because when I read it, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, I had no idea I was that sick. But then now I'm like, woo, because I'm not
Yeah.
that sick anymore. And it's just like, thank
Hmm.
God. And I forgot that that used to happen to me. And how could I have forgotten that that would happen because it was so horrible at the time. But,
Hmm.
you get through it and you get a little bit better. And so I'm kind of curious, would you have any words of advice for people who are going through this right now? Or just some different like words of encouragement for people who are sick?
Definitely. It's really hard when you're in it to see the other side because you're in so much pain and your mind is playing games on you and so you don't really see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I know for me, sometimes I would get frustrated, honestly, when people would tell me like, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. I'm like, well, what do you know? Like you're not me right now. You're not feeling what I'm feeling. But honestly, I think like just staying with it. Honestly, that sounds like kind of silly, but I think sticking with the treatment plan and just putting your all in it and knowing that there really is a light at the end of the tunnel. And whether that might be, but your light might look different than mine. Your light might look different than yours. Everybody's light at the end of the tunnel looks different. So for some people, you might not be 100%, but you're 75%. And then eventually you can maybe get to 100%. It's there's different and the truth is like what you're going through is really hard and not many people are going to understand it, but that's okay in a way because the character development and like the personal growth and the strength that you are going to get from that experience is just going to be insane. And one day there is going to be a day when you are going to look back and you're going to say, wow, first of all, I really did that. And second of all, if you had told me that I would have really done that at that age, in that state, I wouldn't have believed you. I think in the process, just trying to appreciate and be grateful for the little things, like the little accomplishments, because there is no accomplishment that's too small. So you need to acknowledge and bring yourself up when you can. So even if that means I got up out of bed today, I stood up. That's an accomplishment. Like pat yourself on the back for that because that's something that some people can't do. I think I think really there's that quote like comparison is the thief of joy and I think that really I struggled with that a lot when I was sick because I tried to compare my journey to other people's, but the truth is like my body is my body and my body's not going to function exactly like your body and I'm not going to respond to things the exact same way that your body is because that's one thing that makes us beautiful is we're each our own individuals, we're different. And so I think acknowledging that again, your light might be different than than somebody else's, but just staying true and trying to stay strong is the biggest thing, because it does get better. Even when it looks like it's really not going to, I promise you, you will still experience joy and you will have healing. It might take longer than others, but you will get there.
Yes.
Even after too, like I don't think I've experienced real healing. You can be physically healed, and then you have to be like emotionally and mentally healed too, you know? So it's like even when I got, my blood work back, I was physically healed, but I wasn't emotionally and mentally healed. So certain healing, like again, my light at the end of the tunnel physically was in 2020, but I don't think my light at the end of the tunnel mentally and emotionally really happened until this year. So even that's the other thing too, like we're constantly growing and we're constantly evolving and we're constantly healing and trying to get better. So yeah,
Yes.
that was a long roundabout answer, but
That's a very perfect answer. And I just think a lot about that. As a trained Ayurvedic practitioner, I know it goes much more beyond physical disablement, right, for people or physical
Mhm,
disorder. And it is a lot more emotional and spiritual. And really, I think a lot of times at the root, there is an emotional or a spiritual infraction that's happening that's really driving the physical manifestation of dis-ease, right?
mhm.
And I'm curious, and now you've made me think about this, but can you talk a little bit more about things that helped you heal more on an emotional and spiritual level? What kind of things, like we know physical stuff, what we can do maybe for that aspect, but what did you do to help yourself on an emotional and spiritual level?
So like I said, I don't really think I started to really heal emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all those things until really this year. And for one, I think your environment plays a huge role. Like you really do become who you surround yourself with. So coming out of being sick, I think I sometimes had the tendency to kind of just follow the crowd and just do what I thought was right, because again, I wasn't really there for high school. So I was obviously socially developed, but I was still kind of navigating my way a little bit. And it took me a long time to find my people. And there were things that I thought were normal that weren't normal. Like I learned about true friendship, And so I think finding the right people. I mean, I'm really blessed right now in my life. I have amazing friends. I mean, obviously I've always been blessed with an amazing family, so that which some people don't have. So that that alone has already been a lot of support and a lot of help. So I'm very thankful for that. I have a very close family unit. But this year I really just developed really good friendships, and having people who uplift me and who love me for who I am and who support me, that has helped me a lot, because again, it took me a while to find true genuine friendships. So that has helped me a ton. I credit a lot of my healing emotionally to that, to being in that like safe and loving environment. But through that, I also really have reconnected with my faith. And that has also, I think, really made all the difference for me, because I try to look at things a little bit differently now when I'm stressed out. And also, to my friends, we have that same faith base. So I have friends who love me, who hold me accountable, and who encourage me not only, in my life, but also in my faith, who have helped me. So I think reconnecting with my faith and being around people who genuinely love and want the best for me, those two things have just really helped me so much, especially again after all of the all of the Lyme, and even just again trying to find my way. Like I think those two things just have really really helped me, and I've grown so much this past year just because of those two things alone. And that's why I do think now I can actually say I truly feel healed, because the physical was there, but again that mental and that emotional just wasn't. And so it's funny, there's a Bible verse and it's Proverbs. I don't know exactly the chapter and the verse, but it says iron sharpens iron just as one sharpens another. And like that that has just held so true in my life. And so having that faith base and then having that be almost like reaffirmed by the people around me has just made, again, all the difference.
Oh, I love it. And just another testament to the fact that we're never supposed to do this alone, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it does take a village, and I'm glad that you found some people that are genuinely more on your vibe and in your space where you need to be right now.
Mm-hmm.
They say we are the sum of the five people we spend the most time with, and
Mm-hmm.
you'd want to put yourself in a good, safe place that way. And some of my past guests have talked about that and just the need to cut out some relationships that were no longer serving them and the difficulty in doing that, but also
Mm-hmm.
the freedom that they achieved or the healing that was that made space for is well
Mm-hmm.
worth it. And it can be very challenging to be in this alone, if you will, or like without friends
Yeah.
or without people who actually like genuinely see you for what you're
Mm-hmm.
going through. It is possible. And I always remind myself that there's a reason that God's cutting those people out of my life. And
Yeah.
so I'm glad that you found some peace that way as well. And then just as a final thought, Cameron, this is one of my most favorite questions to ask people because we know having gone through this experience that a lot of it is really dark, but I often find, and this is partially why I've picked the name of my podcast to be The Silver Liming, but not everything about this is bad. Could
Mm-hmm.
you tell me, as a result of getting Lyme and tick-borne illness, what's been the best thing that's happened to you?
Mm-hmm. So there's three little different things. I know that sounds like a lot. They kind of all go hand in hand. But the first thing is the people that I've met around in this journey. I mean, being here speaking with you, other people like doctors, professionals, others who have been sick. I mean, the community, the Lyme community as a whole, I think is very supportive of one another. And I think that's such a beautiful thing because again, iron sharpens iron. Like your community is so important, and you need people who are going to be there for you and people who understand because it's hard to understand if you haven't gone through it. So, just the people that I have met and the opportunities that I've had even to share my story have just been phenomenal. I mean, I I really don't want to have to live through it again, but I don't know how much I would change because again, it's just I've met some really amazing, kind-hearted people who are just I just probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet them if I didn't get sick. So I would definitely say that. And another thing too is just how close it's brought in my family. You know, my I'm very, very close with like my siblings, for example, because they saw me at my worst and they were still there for me. You know, I mean, again, my brother was so young and he had to witness all of that. And then my sister was about to go on and start, you know, college and she still made time and was there for me and cared about me and loves me even through all of it. You know, I mean, not my life was uprooted, but theirs was too. And the fact that they stood by me and were patient with me just shows me, you know, so much. It just really brought us closer. And now we can enjoy each other's company because we're all healthy and we can do things together. And then obviously, like with my parents, you know, there were a lot of days when I wouldn't be in school because, you know, I didn't feel well. So I was around them a lot. You know, my parents really became my best friends, you know, even now, like I really look and admire both of them because they had three children and one was sick and they still had full-time jobs, you know, and they managed everything really well. And so I really value their opinion and their advice now because I've seen their character and they've just set an amazing example, not only to me, but to my siblings. Like I see what real love is and leadership in a household. So I'm so thankful to have seen their strength through it all. And also just again the loving family unit that they've really provided all of us. And that's why my siblings and I are so close because they've my parents have set such a wonderful example and they've always kept it a loving environment. And so that's another thing. And then also, honestly, I would say a little bit of the inner strength that I've gotten and I've developed because it's really not an easy thing, especially at my age, you know, to have gone through that. But now, like I do feel like you know, I have a little bit of independence because I did take care of myself. Obviously, my parents were like my primary caregivers for a while, but I still kind of had to be held accountable for what I was doing. If I went out to eat with my friends, like I was the one who said no to, eating pizza when I probably could only really eat a salad, so like there were certain times when I also needed to kind of be there for myself. Like obviously I had my family who helped me, but I also needed to be on board, and I was. And so it just taught me a lot about myself, and I have a lot more. I feel like I'm not scared of hard things anymore because I know that I've gone through the worst and I've still come out, and I've been able to just do very difficult things, and I just continuously am able to kind of tap into that strength that I had and that I showed. And so I would say just also even like that personal growth and development that it has helped me with as well. So those are kind of like the three. I know that was three things, but I do think they kind of all go hand in hand.
Yes, very much so. And just again, a true testament to the fact that while a lot of us wouldn't have asked for this, I feel that many of us wouldn't trade it because of the clarity or the resolution or the experience, like the lessons that we've gained from the experience, right? Like I
Hmm.
wouldn't have chosen this in a million years if you asked me if I wanted to develop my soul further. Having Lyme disease and tick-borne illness would not have been a choice,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Hmm.
But having gone through and coming out the other side and seeing what it really did for me and how much it shaped my life in a better direction and some of the other benefits that have come
Hmm.
for you in your life, with a closer
Hmm.
family, stronger unit. And I feel like more security and maybe surety in the fact of what genuine love really is like and what that feels
Hmm.
like. And I think that'll probably serve you well later in life. I'm not sure if you have a boyfriend or if you have a relationship, but just remember what that looked like. And that's,
Hmm.
you want to make sure that whoever your partner is, if you choose one, that is the
Hmm.
same, right? That love is on that same level because it does
Hmm.
exist and it is there. And I'm glad that you got to experience it and that you know what that feels like because sometimes people don't. And, I think that makes it a little bit more muddy when we don't know what true love really is. And so I'm
I
glad that
agree.
you got
Hmm.
to experience that as a upside to this
Hmm.
space. So, yeah, well,
Hmm.
this has been a lot of fun, and I'm really grateful again to have you here and as living, breathing proof that you can indeed heal and get better. And it's going to take sometimes a lot of elbow grease, maybe a lot of money, unfortunately, maybe a lot of dedication, time commitment, changing of your entire molecular structure into a whole new being,
Hmm.
but it's possible. And it is definitely something that people are capable of. If I could do it, if you could do it, if you're listening, you can do it as well. And please
Definitely.
just take our stories as proof of this. And if you have questions for Camryn, I would imagine, are you okay if people reach out to you on
Yeah,
social
definitely.
media? And is
Always,
there,
yeah.
yeah, perfect. So she is there, and you're more than welcome to follow her as well. But again, just thank you for your time and your vulnerability. I really appreciate it, Camryn.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me. It's been a real pleasure.
Awesome.